Hi, thank you for joining us to learn a little bit about First Then boards. First Then boards are a visual form that provides high motivation for the learners to work through one activity to get to a preferred activity. Some people equate First Then boards to Grandma's rule. First you eat your peas, then you get a piece of delicious chocolate cake. It's important to remember that a lot of us use First Then statements in our day-to-day lives, but First Then boards are actually a visual support that can be utilized by anyone and are especially effective for individuals with autism. First Then boards are very simple and easy to use, but they must be taught. A great first step is to reach out to your child's teacher and see if they have used First Then boards in their classroom. When you're talking through this with the teacher, make sure that you ask what step they are on in understanding the use of a First Then board. More on that in just a few minutes. The key components to the First Then board are pretty straightforward. You need two columns, one that says first and a second column that says then. Let's look at a few examples. This is an example of a First Then board with working an iPad. The example on the left uses pictures and has a simple term called work versus something more specific called math, as the example on the right shows. The use of a dry erase board is great, especially in times like these where we'll be using the First Then board for multiple occasions throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the week. This is an example of a First Then board as well, but instead of using pictures, icons, or written text, they have used written text of the first and the then, and then they've actually used objects. So in this example, first diaper change, then read a book. So I referenced this at the very beginning. Whenever you reach out to your child's teacher, asking them where they are in the steps of teaching First Then boards can be very, very helpful. If your loved one is brand new to using the boards, you might want to just start back at the beginning in your own home. Some individuals with autism or other learners as well might struggle with generalizing skills from one environment to another. So while they might have been pretty independent in using First Then boards at school, they might need to be retaught the skill in the home environment. I'm going to go through each of these one by one. The first step in teaching a First Then board is to identify what your child really likes. I recommend making 3 columns, one for items that your child loves, one column for things that your child likes, and a final column of things that your child doesn't like. So I did this with my 10-year-old daughter, and here are some examples that she gave me. She loves dancing, taking walks, playing with her dog, playing with Legos, and her favorite thing above all else is organizing the pantry. You can see in the center column some of the things that she likes, and finally, in the column on the right, you see a few things that she doesn't like. Throughout the course of teaching these steps, I will share with you some examples from my daughter's list. Once you know what items your child really likes, then you can get started on using a First Then board. First, you need to create a First Then board. You can simply use a paper and pen to create 2 columns, write the word first on the left column and the word then on the right column, and then you can pair that with pictures of the item or activity that they are going to be accessing. You can also just simply write the word if your child is at that point. You could also use objects like the example that I provided earlier. Whenever you're first teaching a First Then board, it's very, very important that you take this slowly. Take 2 items from that first column, that column that indicates items and activities that they absolutely love to do. So, for my daughter's list, first dancing, then play Legos. Or first organize the pantry, then play with Coco. It's very important when you first start teaching a First Then board that you start with items that are both from the love category. Once you've had several days of utilizing the First Then board with success, you can start moving on to lesser preferred items, and we'll talk about that in the next few slides. Please, please, please take this step slowly, because if you or your loved one doesn't have a good grasp on how the First Then boards work, you will have an uphill battle integrating lesser preferred activities into the First Then board. So once the individual has a really good grasp on how to use the First Then board, you can gradually introduce lesser preferred activities or items into the board. This will always be in the first column. The then column is always reserved for those items or activities that they absolutely love. The third step for teaching a first then board is to gradually introduce lesser preferred and finally non-preferred tasks as the first expectation. That is, items or activities that would fall in that first column, the column on the left. It's important that the then expectation, the activity or item that they do after the lesser preferred activity, is always something from that column of items that they have identified of things that they love to do or things that they love to experience. So, if we think back to my daughter's list, first brush hair, then play with Legos, or first reading, then play with Coco, her dog. Again, take your time with this. Offer several opportunities throughout the course of the day and offer this over several days before you get to that final column of your list of things that they don't really like to do paired with something from the love column. So if you think back to my daughter's list, first brush hair, then play with Legos. Or first reading, then play with Coco. After the individual has had several opportunities over the course of several days to be successful using items from their like category paired with something from their love category, it would be at that point that you could introduce something from their doesn't like category in the first expectation or the first column paired with something from the love column in the then section of your first then board. It's very important that as you move through this process that you make sure that the then expectation is always a highly preferred item, always something that they very much like to do. One of the things to keep in mind as you're going through this process is to ask the individual. And if they are a nonverbal communicator, you know how they communicate. There's other ways that they let you know things that they love to do, that they like to do, or that they don't like to do. So listen to what your individual is telling you. Here's an example from my daughter. These are items from her does not like list paired with items from her love list. So first math, then take a walk. First put laundry away, then dancing. I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about first then boards. They can be easily made at home. Remember that you can just use paper and pencil, or you can make something on Word very, very simply. You just need two columns, one that says first, one that says then. It's important to remember that as you are teaching this, you want to start with items that they really, really like. Once you have identified those items and they've had some great success with that, then you and your loved one are ready to move to lesser preferred activities. Give it some time and don't just jump to non-preferred tasks being paired with something that they do like. Take your time with introducing this skill. Just like with everything else, this will need to be taught. If you have any questions regarding first then boards or other strategies, don't hesitate to reach out to your child's teacher, ask what they have done successfully in the classroom, and see if they have any ideas on how you could modify it to best meet the home environment. Also, don't forget that the folks at the Kentucky Autism Training Center are an email away and ready to help as best we can. Take care and be well.